Sophia Melas, head of partnerships. Head of partnerships for Europe and the US at Fly Now, Pay Later. Thank you very much for joining us on PhocusWire Pulse. Let's dive straight in. We don't have very long. So I just wondered, first of all, Sophia, if you could just talk us through the kind of the appeal of the buy now, pay later concept as you kind of see it at the moment, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Just wanted to say first, thanks for having me on here. And yeah, so I think the benefits are twofold, right? I mean, their benefits are for the customer and there are benefits for the travel merchant, right? And I think obviously the benefits for the customer are in turn benefits for the travel merchant, because if it's a benefit for the customer, it's going to benefit the airline or OTA or whatever. But I think first and foremost, I mean, for the customer, it's a lower upfront cost. And this has existed in travel forever, right? I mean, a lot of times, maybe less so in the States, but there has been a deposit payment you can make, and then you can pay more up until you travel. And with buy now, pay later, you're less restricted in terms of when you can make the payment. But it's a lower upfront cost. So I think in travel, a lot of times we'll see people will be shopping for a trip and have like 15 different tabs open and go around until they can find the cheapest and lowest price. And if you have this opportunity to instantly spread the cost, you're not going to maybe be searching as far as if you were to just see it right on the spot, right? And instead of paying maybe £500 to travel to Mexico next year, you can pay £100 today and not pay it all immediately. And then obviously for travel brands, the benefit for that is they can sell more trips and they can have sort of a competitive edge on maybe some of their competitors who don't offer this payment solution. To summarize.
Now, one of the things quite interesting and summarized very well. I mean, one thing I find quite interesting about this kind of concept is the kind of the geography of it all, by which I mean, the pay later, buy now concept has been around for quite a long time in Europe. I mean, many of the big tour operators, the Thomas Cooks, may it rest in peace. I just wondered if you could talk us through the kind of the geographic considerations. So in Europe, the buy now, pay later concept has been around for a long time. Major tour operators, Thomas Cook, TUI, those kind of companies had this concept for a long time. But we go back 2 or 3 years, and lots of other brands, especially in North America, have kind of caught on to this. UFOC have had funding, Affirm has had funding, Uplift has had funding. It seems to be something that's kind of happened in the last 2 or 3 years pre-pandemic. What's kind of happened to bring this kind of concept back into the mainstream, as it were?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, it makes sense to have installment payment for travel. I mean, usually when you buy something, you're getting it immediately. But with travel, if you're booking ahead and you're trying to get the lowest possible price, you're not going to get it for quite some time. I mean, it could be up to a year. So I think that the model of having to kind of pay over time, it really is most conducive to travel, because you're not going to be getting what you're paying for quite some time for now. So I think that's why this model has existed forever. And I think in Europe, obviously, it's more popular because these tour operators, as it exists, it's more of a European thing. So Thomas Cook, TUI offering this model, they're doing that to best serve their customers. And I think now it's coming into the States because we don't necessarily have. I mean, obviously we have some of them. We have large tour operators there, but it's more dispersed through different airlines, OTAs, et cetera. So I think that these third-party payment providers have come in because they've recognized that this model has worked well in the industry before. And also by coming in and offering this service for a travel brand, we are able to take on the risk and, other not so glamorous things that are associated with installment payment, right? So I think that this is something that we've obviously seen work before, and it's successful now because the model of it is conducive to travel.
Tell us, Sophia, is there a particular segment or sector within the industry where it's more popular than others? If we think of airlines, hotels, or, we just mentioned tour operating and the travel agency kind of fed world into tour operating. Is there a particular sector that it's been kind of taken up by customers and brands as well? Yeah.
So obviously with hotels, I think the payment for hotels is kind of a little more, I don't want to say disjointed, but it's not as straightforward as it necessarily is with booking, a flight online, right? Because sometimes with hotels, you'll pay a deposit, you'll pay more there. So I think definitely this model is great. It's particularly popular with airlines. I know a lot of airlines have shown interest in our brand, particularly in recent months, because they're trying to increase direct sales. And so, by offering a flexible payment plan that maybe other OTAs that are also selling their flights aren't offering, they're able to kind of have this one up on them, and be able to offer something unique that will incentivize the customer to book directly with them as the airline than on an OTA. But having said that, obviously, a lot of OTAs are using the similar buy now, pay later schemes. And that is also to kind of get this lowest upfront cost. So I would say any segment where the customer would traditionally have to pay the full price up front, but is able to then stagger their payment, that is who it's most popular for. So because hotels, it's not as always as linear. Airlines and OTAs, are probably our most popular segments.
We've done very well. We're 6 minutes into this interview and we haven't mentioned COVID. So let's mention COVID now if we can.
Times are changing.
Apologies. But I think it's an important thing. So, can you talk us through maybe some of the ways in which the pandemic and this kind of now nearly 18-month period has impacted the products and the features and the different kind of service functions and the business objectives around this, if at all? Maybe it hasn't, but I'm assuming it has.
Well, I mean, obviously COVID has been incredibly difficult on the travel industry, and we only serve the travel industry, so it's been hard. But I think that we have been able to kind of collect more investment and seen an uptick in interest is because this is, I don't want to try to shed a positive light on COVID at all, but for buy now, pay later, it is a great option. And I think COVID has really kind of shown the importance, or, highlighted this desire of people to kind of maybe safeguard their spend. And instead of paying, job security isn't, I don't want to touch on job security and as it relates to spreading the cost of a payment, but people are less likely. I mean, just the fact of the matter is people are less likely to just go out and shell £1,000 right now on a ticket. And so by spreading the cost, they're able to, they're not spending that 1,000 immediately. They're going to spend 100 immediately. And then they can kind of see how it goes. If their flight gets canceled, if something happens, then it's easier for them to get that money back. And there's less of an upfront cost. So I think that, that COVID has done that. I think also with, in terms of people using buy now, pay later in light of COVID, we serve as a barrier. I mean, this is for travel merchants too, because it's been just as hard on them as it is for people trying to travel.
Right.
So we serve as a sort of intermediary between the customer and the airline. So it's like an extra level of support, and that's on both sides. I mean, we fight. I don't want to say fight, but we support our clients in whatever clients is in airlines, OTAs, in whatever way possible. But also, we're here to support our customers too. So if they're getting a refund on their airline ticket, we're going to refund them the money on whatever they're paying, or we're going to tell them they don't have to keep making payments if they're not traveling. So it's like we offer breathing space on both sides to the customers and then also to the travel brands.
There's been a lot of discussion already just between you and I of what are the great opportunities here, whether it's for consumers or the brands themselves. But there must be some kind of challenges involved for the brands and the customers as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there absolutely are, and I think it's kind of getting people to believe in the concept and trust a third party to manage something that is as touchy as payments. So for the travel merchant, it's like, okay, like we're going to have these guys. I mean, we pay them. The way our model works is we pay them immediately the full basket value of the booking, right? So it's getting them to kind of be like, does this payment actually work? Or are they going to try to issue I don't want to say the word, but chargebacks? Like what's going on here? So I think it's just it's gaining the trust from the travel merchant and then also from the consumer. That's the biggest barrier. But in general, across all industries, not even travel, we've seen a huge increase in the presence of buy now, pay later. It's everywhere. I mean, and I used to associate it personally with like higher ticket items, like, or higher priced items, like, buying a car or financing a TV or something. But I think now we see it as like, on ASOS or on any like sort of fashion e-commerce sites, like for, prices at like as much as £60, we're seeing things financed. So I think that has also helped build trust in the industry in general. It's just kind of seeing it all over and across all different verticals.
Does it have, say if you're an airline or a tour operator, there's often a very complex and convoluted way that money flows around the ecosystem, whether it's from the agent to the airline or from the agent to the tour operator, or in the hotel sense, it doesn't get paid until after the stay.
Right.
We could talk, I have a whole session just talking about the crazy mechanics of the way money moves around the industry. But with what you're doing here, does that change anything? Is that something that brands need to be aware of, the way that they pay their own suppliers, or indeed other people that are part of the payment system?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm glad you're asking this, because there is a lot of confusion around that. And even when I first started working at Fly Now Pay Later, like mapping out the payment landscape of some of these brands, I was like, have like elaborate flow charts. And it's really hard to kind of comprehend. And it's also not a one size fits all model. It's different for every single company. So I think the best answer for this is that, implementing, at least I can speak to our buy now, pay later solution, but I think across the board, it doesn't have any impact on it. So if a customer selects to choose buy now, pay later checkout, they go through the payment, they complete the booking, we pay them with a virtual card. And that works the exact same as a customer paying them with a debit card. So that they get the money immediately and they can disperse with it as they please. So it doesn't change the overall payment flow.
Has there been any hesitancy from travel brands to adopt this model? Because if there wasn't any hesitancy at all, every brand would do it. Yeah. So what are some of the questions that you get from them if they're slightly unsure about doing it?
Well, as I'm sure you know, like the travel industry overall is relatively antiquated. And the systems that they use, and I don't mean that people traveling or people in the industry are like, are old or outdated, but the systems that we use have been around forever. So when you throw something new into it, everyone's like, what is going on here? And so, yeah, it's changed even over like the, 2.5 years that I've been at Fly Now Pay Later. Our objections and concerns from travel merchants are evolving. And so, whereas before people are like, oh, is that going to kind of tarnish our brand image? Like, we're a luxury tour operator, we don't want to have to offer these payment services. Where now, and I think this is because you are seeing it everywhere. You're seeing it across all types of websites, luxury or not, that people are less worried about it maybe tarnishing their brand image, and maybe more like, okay, like logistically, how is it going to work out? When do we get paid? How does the payment flow work? Like, what is our relationship with our customers? How do cancellations and refunds work? So those are the, I don't want to call them objections, but that's what's being flagged more and more now, obviously because of COVID, I think, with refunds and cancellations. But to give kind of a blanket answer to that is that it doesn't disrupt that flow at all. Like if your customer is going to get a refund and they booked with Fly Now Pay Later, they'll get the exact same refund that they were to get if they didn't. So if there's no interruption, it's just, you can think of it as just part of the process in terms of, misaligning it.
Is there an opportunity through adopting this concept or this model for brands to use it as a way of building loyalty? Because on the one hand, you think, well, yes, of course, because if people have the chance to buy now and pay later, that they think that's a great idea and they'll come back. But there is also, the flip side of that is possibly they may be having difficulty paying. So this may be only a once every 2-year trips. And that's a very inherently difficult thing to get loyalty from, is incredibly infrequent travelers.
So we actually see, our biggest customer demographics are millennials, obviously younger consumers, because they're the quickest to pick up on these things. They're not as attached to credit cards as, let's say, older generations are. But, just with technology, they adopt things quicker. But just on that, is it also reflected in the fact that they perhaps don't have as much disposable income as well? Is that a correlation? So that could be one, but I think it's just in general, they're more likely to kind of pick up on new trends and incorporate them into their daily habits. Mm-hmm. But I also think that so that is one trend, but then another, and I really want to veer away from like the fact that it's not necessarily if you have the money or disposable income up front. I think it's more of just like payment flexibility. Like, do you want to max out your credit card before you go on holiday? Do you want to kind of pay with this option to ensure that when you are on holiday, you can spend all the money that you want? And you don't have to worry about what you already spent on the plane tickets. So that obviously is one demographic, which is hard to count millennials as a demographic because there's so many of them. But another one are families and friends that make, or families that make, or individuals that make repeated trips back to the same place. So those are people that are visiting their family, visiting relatives, visiting friends in another location. And let's say they make a annual, biannual, every 2-year trip to the same place, and they know that they're going to have to spend a large amount of money every year, twice a year, every few years. Those are the people that are using our product as well. And so in offering our solution, I mean, I think it's one of the benefits that we talk about with merchants is you're kind of building that loyalty because you're showing them that you have these flexible payment options for them. So if they do have to continuously make this trip, that they can book in advance, they can capitalize on, whatever early bird discount that site's offering, because they'll have that flexibility. They don't have to wait till they save up that money later on.
Is there a role in all this that somehow plays into a company's overall kind of growth strategy at all?
Definitely. So in offering, I mean, just like I'm going to try to make this as straightforward and not pack as many things in here as I can, but quite simply, if you have, I mean, just like the optics of it all, if you have a 1,000 pound trip, okay, and it says 1,000 pounds, and then if you say spread the cost over, make it easy, over 4 months, and then you see 250, and that's the value that you have. Like having this lower upfront basket value drastically increases your conversion rate. And we've seen that time and time again with all of our merchants. So I think that if you are, let's say you have higher price trips and you're trying to market yourselves to a younger demographic who, isn't going to maybe shell out 3,000 pounds on their next holiday, but and so in offering this, you can have a lower upfront cost. And I think it opens the opportunity up to so many more consumers and I want to really clarify that can't not afford the trip, but that just maybe are safeguarding their money a little bit more. I mean, we run a credit check. We make sure that whoever is using our product is eligible and able to pay it back. So yeah, just want to clarify that.
No, well clarified indeed. Thank you very much. Okay, so last of all then, if we can then, Sophia, I mean, how does this all kind of develop from here? I mean, is the model very set in stone? It is what it is and it's working great and people like it, but how does it kind of evolve, or is this it?
No, I mean, I think the name of the game is flexibility. Like we exist to provide payment flexibility. Most of these buy now, pay later companies are emerging fintech startups, right? And I think as any sort of space that is constantly evolving, you can't create a one size fits model across all industries, across all different demographics, and certainly across all different regions. So just as our company being live in 3 different countries, we have had to adopt the way we collect payments, the way we operate, the way we structure our repayment services in all different regions. So I think that, and these things take time, and we've only been able to kind of really finely tune these things because we've tried it out. And so I think that if we have to view this model, I mean, the model's there, right? Buy now, pay later. But whether we want to do an interest-free product where the cost is associated with the travel merchant, or another model where there's a cost associated with the consumer because that works best for this certain package holiday. Like I think it has to be a model that has flexibility within offering the payment flexibility. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And we are a travel-specific payment solution because we recognize how this sort of buy now, pay later model can't be applied to all verticals. And we function differently than other solutions that do operate within e-commerce or fashion, for example. So you have to kind of tweak the model, I think, to accommodate your demographic, your region, and whatever it is that you're selling.
Perfectly put. So thank you very much, Sophia Melas from Fly Now, Pay Later. Thank you very much for joining us on PhocusWire Pulse for this edition.
Yeah.
Thanks ever so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. Speak to you soon.